Okay, like so. Good.
Okay, yes.
Right.
We are ready. I will try. I was thinking about like a new intro, which I don't. You can actually give me your feedback if it's total or not. Hello, dear friends, and welcome to my podcast dedicated to sight reading, interesting talks, and early music. My name is Darina Blogina. What do you think about it? It's okay?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Because before it was dedicated to like sight reading in the field of early music, where like I would ask you to sight read with me, but now people don't have the time and you need a bit more time, and we record also music. I mean, we could do that eventually, but now it like converted into interviews mostly.
I see that. Yeah, sure.
Due to practical reasons. Yeah. So maybe you could just introduce yourself shortly, briefly for our listeners.
Okay.
Like.
I will try to do that. So my name is Marc Lewon, and I'm enthusiastic about early music, particularly medieval music, but in recent years my work on the Renaissance has become more important. So it's fascinating to wander all fields of really early music, anything pre-Baroque really. So I play the lute, which is of course one of the famed instruments of the Renaissance and the late Middle Ages. And I also work at the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis, where I have a professorship for those things, that is playing the lute and being enthusiastic about early music in many ways, in ensembles, but also in theory classes and so on.
It's a great definition of your profession, that I'm being enthusiastic about my interests. It's really cool. But interestingly, you have defined also the field of your interest, the way that it's either medieval and then you kind of fluctuated to Renaissance music. Could you describe how it happened and why?
Yeah, my original interest was really into the earlier the better. Maybe out of a romantic, projection and interest. So when I first encountered early music, really early music, like medieval music, or what I thought of was, what I thought medieval music was, I was kind of captivated by it, and I wanted to discover that more. So my original journey went early and earlier. I really tried to figure out what did the music of the Middle Ages sounded like. So I wanted to get into that more and more, and finally I could do some studies. In the 90s, the internet was only just developing. So when I started, there was nothing to look up online. Online didn't exist yet. So you'd ask people to tell you more for a book recommendation maybe. You ask your way. You basically, person to person, you ask your way around to get to those who have more expertise and who can tell you more, or where you point you to a recording or a book that you can read and that will tell you more. And eventually I heard of certain places where you can study these things, and the Schola Cantorum was of course amongst them, and eventually I ended up there and to finalize my studies in the medieval music era. But it was a long journey, and it was a roundabout journey for me. It wasn't straightforward.
And could you tell about the earlier times of your youth, maybe when you have decided for yourself that you would like to study early music? What motivated you?
Well, as a child or a youth, I never had the idea of actually studying music. I had broad interests, and some of them were more directed towards the hard sciences, so physics and maths. That was quite interesting to me, but I also looked into other things and played music on the side, played the guitar. It was only towards the end of my pupil days, of the days when I was, school days, the proper school days, that I went into music more and more, that the interest was awakened more and more. I saw a couple of performances in costumes, people dressing up for Renaissance music. It was a mixture of folk music and Renaissance, a bit of medieval music that came together in those performances. But I was kind of transfixed by those. And afterwards I went up to the people and asked them, where do you perform? Where can I see this again or more of this? And they pointed me to some medieval markets. We're talking end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, so 1990 perhaps, or 89, 88, I think it was. And so I jumped. I just had my driver's license from the States. I spent a year in the States and I got my driver's license there. So I was one of the few people who with 17 could drive in Germany because I had the license already. So I jumped into a little car that I borrowed from a friend and went to my first medieval market with a guitar in the back, and to just hook up with people there, get to know people and listen to the music and hopefully join in somehow. And it took quite a while after that before I actually got into it myself.
And what do you think nowadays? How did your life change with the appearance of online, let's say, of internet, of quick search and research?
My life personally, I think, has not changed as radically as one might think, because my part of my education in early music was already done by the time it really became big, or became a tool that you can use for studying properly. So when the online facsimiles came, so the online scans of sources, that was a game changer. But it was long after I'd acquired facsimiles myself, printed facsimiles or scans of microfilms that we did at the university. And so basically I had already access to the sources through other means, and now it just became better. Now we have them in high resolution and in color, beautiful, at the tips of our fingers, which was much more difficult before that. But by that time, I already had the access. It just became a bit more convenient and better now. But I believe that were I that young again and been brought into contact with early music, it might have been much quicker for me now. Again, when I started getting interested in this, it was a long and roundabout way. I tend to say I took the scenic route. I saw many things on the side, and I don't regret having done that. But it took me many years to finally come around and find my people, so to speak, here in Basel, the group of people we still work with, the Schola Cantorum, all of that. That took for me many, many years to find it. And I might have found it much earlier had the internet already existed, or the means that we have today. If that had been available back then, I might have taken a much more direct route. But again, I don't regret having taken the roundabout way.
That's interesting, because when you were sharing your impressions about the medieval market, I was thinking, now we are, every day of our lives, we are online, and we are by ourselves in a way, like we're all online, but at the same time we are feeling a bit lonely in this enormous space. So actually, I don't know if it would have taken you a shorter amount of time. I don't know, what do you think about this online presence in the early music field? How does it feel for you now?
Of course, it brings a community together that otherwise might not have found together. So we meet online in forums or on Facebook, and there are groups for Ars Subtilior, for Ars Nova Music, for Ars Antiqua Music, and they are sharing new findings, and they find one another across boundaries and countries, from countries far away even. So something like that would have been very difficult in that time, unless you go to conferences where people actually physically travel there. But for me, so a community that is a niche. We are the niche of a niche, no? That's clear. So the niche is early music, and the niche of the niche is Renaissance and medieval music, maybe. So we are actually a fairly small group of people who are really digging in deep there, digging our heels in, so to speak, and to find the others who are also that interested in this very, very specific subject. That is a great help, I think. So all of a sudden people can come together and share knowledge and share interests that would probably not have found each other 30 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe.
And what are those interests that you are digging into nowadays?
But it really depends, what is put in front of me. I have rarely sought out myself a very, very specific subject. Often it comes my way these days. So like a little windfall. Someone is asking for something, and that's the moment where I say, okay, I'll take on this task and I'll start some reading and getting into it, and all of a sudden we have a new program, or we're looking at a new codex or a repertoire that I hadn't looked at before. So whatever comes my way, really, and that I dedicate my time to, becomes the new project and the most important thing in the moment, and maybe just for a little while. Yeah, and then it's archived in the head somewhere and in the fingers if you're playing it. And that's great. And at some later point, we might reference again, go back to that thing. So what came my way it was for ReRenaissance is, of course, a wonderful place to be with these tasks where new subjects come your way every month. Something new comes along. And you can task yourself with something that otherwise you would say, maybe I won't dedicate time to this because I don't know what comes of it. But if in ReRenaissance we have a concert set, we have a goal, and all of a sudden that becomes then a topic that you can take on and learn something. So the last thing I did was the lute duos from the Haeckel print. So we have got a print for 2 lutes from 1556, printed in Strasbourg by Haeckel. I knew about them for a long time, but I've never really looked into them. And when Julian Beer suggested, let's do those duos, I said, okay. And so I started looking at them, playing through them, started editing, correcting, and then we practiced, rehearsed. We got the right size lutes, because you need a big lute and a small lute and all of that to make it work. And we're discovering a new repertoire for us and new techniques. So that was the latest thing.
Great, but maybe for the people who don't know what ReRenaissance is, you could shortly highlight.
We are here in the headquarters of ReRenaissance. That is das Haus zum Hohen Dolder in Basel, in St. Alban Vorstadt. ReRenaissance is an association, ein Verein, we say in German, dedicated to performing Renaissance music in Basel with local forces, with Renaissance musicians from the area. So we are not getting people from far away. We don't have travel costs and all of that. We do something local because we have so many Renaissance specialists and musicians here in Basel itself. So it's kind of a luxury. And we are putting on 1 concert per month, every last Sunday of the month in the Barfüßerkirche, so the historic museum of Basel. And every other year we also are planning a festival. And this year we'll have a festival again in September, end of September. Yeah, so that's basically what we're doing. So we are a group of people who are planning these concerts a year in advance, and we are putting together musicians that we feel can perform this repertoire well. And it is a chance to try new stuff as well. It doesn't have to be a program that can be successful in all the festivals. It may, but it doesn't have to be. And we have the opportunity to just try out something, maybe something that otherwise would not get done.
And you have mentioned that every concert has a subject, a certain subject that is dedicated to. Could you maybe highlight how you get to the idea of like which subject will be the next one, or you have it planned a year ago? How do you come to this planning aspect?
So our committee consists of 6 members now who are making the musical and artistic decisions. So when we're meeting, we have several meetings where we discuss next year's plan, and we're trying to make it diverse, so musically diverse, but also regarding the lineup, the ensembles, so that we have at least one that is with a family of instruments, such as recorders or transverse flutes or lutes or gambas, or something like that. So that we have a consort program, that we have something from different countries, that we have something Spanish, something English. Not every year do we get all the countries in Europe together, but that we have a bit of an eye out to cover different bases. One program should be dedicated to Basel or Switzerland more generally, so a source that is from here, or a repertoire that we know originated or was printed in Basel, something like that. So we have several, we have a list of things that we want to tick every year. And we're also trying to get a good balance between vocal music and instrumental music, something that is a bit later, maybe late Renaissance, something that is a bit earlier, that we really go into the 15th century. That's how we come up with it. Sometimes there's a jubilee. When we had the Josquin year, we put up a bit more Josquin. Like we had one piece of Josquin in every concert, something like that. Or, next year, Oswald von Wolkenstein will be 650 years old if he were still alive. So we'll dedicate probably a program to Oswald von Wolkenstein, things like that.
We'll prepare a special present for him that hopefully he will enjoy up there. Anyways, but I was also wondering, because I remember the time when the ReRenaissance did not exist yet, but people were getting together to form this association, and there were some talks and some ideas in the air about that. Could you maybe not explain, but share the point why this concert series was needed at that time here in Basel?
Well, it's very hard to say if something is actually needed, I mean, we want it, and we felt that Basel is the right place to have it, since there is, since we have the studies in the Schola Cantorum where you can actually study these instruments and this music, and we have the people around. Also, of course, we didn't know it at the time. The pandemic was around the corner, so it turned out to be quite a good pandemic project to do. In the beginning, of course, the first performances were straight away cancelled, but after that we could do live streams. We could give employment to musicians who otherwise would hardly play in the lockdown times, and we could actually do certain concerts to a certain degree. So it actually became something that grew during the pandemic lockdowns and was very helpful. Also, we had more time to dedicate to developing ReRenaissance during the pandemic, because nothing else was going on, no? So but it was really decided by Elisabeth Stählin, who founded ReRenaissance. It was her idea, together with Tabea Schwarz. The two together started to make plans in 2019, and they asked me to join them. So the three of us were then the next to continue planning for our first season in 2020. And bit by bit, we got other musicians in to partake in the planning committee, in the Vorstand, so in the direction of ReRenaissance, but also in the artistic direction. And that's when we developed the idea, what should ReRenaissance actually be? Are we an ensemble? Are we an organizer who hires ensembles? And we decided that we are neither, that we provide and direct these concerts, but that we are going to ask musicians from the area, and we are putting together new ensembles every time, new combinations of people.
And have you ever seen other associations like yours, like ReRenaissance, where it's neither an ensemble, neither an organization, neither a festival, so it's all at once? Have you seen these formats before?
I personally haven't, and it took me a while to understand what we are actually. In the beginning, I thought we are basically an organizer. And I think some people think that when they come across it, because it is, of course, unique, and you need to explain what it actually is. and we needed to figure it out for ourselves. But it does give us great freedom in organizing and planning very specific concerts, because when we want a certain subject to be treated, we can make sure that it actually has the right people, the right forces to make that music, and also that the content will be really what we were thinking about in in our circle, in our planning circle. So it works really well that way. When Elisabeth Stählin finally stepped back, because she had done many years of, she was working, I don't know, 150% or something for ReRenaissance. It was crazy, but she made it all happen. And then finally, when she wanted to take a bit of a breather, we had to get someone in to take over the direction, and that was Holly Scarborough then, who took over and took the lead from Elisabeth and helped make this series of concerts sustainable so that we can continue, that it can go on. Together with her, and then here Thomas, who is the head of the this Haus zum Hohendolder, Thomas Christ. Together they are making sure that the series continues.
Talking about, let's say, linking back to sustainability, this idea of inviting musicians that are local, how did you come to that? Is it a historical hint, let's say, or it's a very modern hint, meaning that we should all refer to sustainability and we should make our work sustainable for the community that we live in?
I believe that all these ideas somehow come together in this principle. But originally it was very practical. You know, we didn't know if we were going to have any funding for this, if we were going to get enough collector at the end of the concerts, if people are spending enough money after. We didn't want to sell tickets. No, we opened it up and it stayed like that. So people are giving a donation at the end of the concerts, and we weren't sure how much money would come in, if we can actually pay our musicians properly. So for the first season, what we did, we asked the musicians if they were prepared to partake in this, not knowing how much fee they would get at the end of the year. So the first plan was that at the end of the year, we see how much money came in, we divide it by the number of people who played, and then you get a fee, and it might be very small. So we tried to keep the circle of musicians quite limited in the beginning, and all of them said that they would partake no matter what it makes. It's an initiative they support. And there we wanted to make sure that our costs are as low as possible. So we said, we're taking people only from Basel. We don't have to pay any hotels, no travel costs, stay here, make it simple and make it cheap. When the pandemic struck, that was luck, because no travels were possible in any case. So taking local musicians was a super bonus in that time. And at the same time, we thought, it's also sustainable. We have so many musicians here who can play this music. Why import people from Hamburg or wherever? Let's stay here in the crowd. And we have only very few exceptions that when we need someone very specific, that we are taking someone from a bit further away, but still there are no travel costs and accommodation that are covered.
Yeah, because I think now it's a big topic everywhere in all the organizations, orchestras. REMA is talking about that a lot, the European Early Music Network, and also in the classical music field, everywhere, contemporary music field, they all talk about sustainability, that how can we make it happen that people don't travel with their instruments. Basically, an entire orchestra travels and takes up the space in the plane, and what that means for the environment and for the climate change and everything. Yes. So what do you think, how our field, maybe early music field, is going to develop in that regard? Because with your example, you show that it's possible. What do you think about this?
Well, I must say it's possible in Basel, and we have to appreciate that we have a very special situation here. Basel is not poor. There is money there that can be spent on culture, and there is an audience. There's an audience that has been educated by the many museums that are in Basel, and by the many musical performances, and the Musikhochschule and the academies and the So there's a lot of education going on in music, specifically also early music, but also jazz, other kinds of music. We have a receptive audience who is interested in doing this, who also are free to give generously in the donations after concerts, so that from those fees alone, something can actually happen and does work. And I am well aware that this is not possible necessarily anywhere else in the same degree, but one can still try to develop something. So I found this initiative very helpful, especially thinking about the times we are in, and it's becoming ever more difficult even to travel now. Not to think of the environment alone, but also practicalities and to see how the political environment is developing. So to do something locally is very, I think, forward-looking and helpful for musicians. Also, after so many years traveling, it's nice when you're in your 20s and you think of journeys to travel, concert tours, to travel to faraway places to perform. It is enticing. But after having done that for 10, 20 years, you're really happy to be playing at home. And that in our field, that rarely happens. Now we are all in Basel, and there was no Renaissance music series, nothing geared towards the medieval music and Renaissance music. So if you wanted to perform, you had to go somewhere else. Huh? And they noticed everybody is coming from Basel to play Renaissance music somewhere else. But we at some point noticed we are hardly ever playing in Basel, or very rarely. Sometimes there's the occasion here and there, but there was no series dedicated to this kind of music. So we felt, it's about time. Let's try it. Let's see. Here we can find an audience, and it has grown ever since. So by now we have more than 200 per concert, audience per concert, which is quite large for music like that.
And how do you shape the concerts? Is it like an educational component that is included in there? How do you communicate with the audience in the concerts?
Well, we do have the program notes. We have quite extensive programs that are printed and sold at the concert venues. We also provide them as PDFs from our homepage, so you can just download that as well if you wanted. And they are meant to introduce the music or the source of what this specific concert is all about to the audience. Sometimes we have also a pre-concert talk. One of the musicians or a specially invited guest will speak to the audience a quarter of an hour about the music or the repertoire that is being performed. Sometimes it's also about a special instrument that is introduced, something like that, or instrument combination. So there is a component of, it's an educative component. There's also almost always a research component involved, because some of the music either needs yet to be edited or missing parts to be completed. Things like that take up some of our time. And we try to document all of that in the program notes and on the homepage. So we are trying to create an archive, if you will, of information, research that we've gathered in producing the programs.
Great. Sometimes I ask people who organize festivals or concert series, I ask them, how does it affect your personality, the whole process? Do you have to sometimes take a distance to feel that, okay, I am a separate person, I'm an individual from this concert series, because in a way it's your creation as well? How do you feel inside of that paradigm?
So, changing sides from a performer to becoming an organizer, if you will. It is, of course, a gradual process. And it is true, you're seeing a different perspective. All of a sudden, you're seeing the other side. As a performer or even a director of an ensemble who is employed by an organizer, you see one side, and of course you have certain perceptions of what you need, what you require, what maybe people do not take care of when you're hired, and you're frustrated with certain things maybe. And being on the other side, all of a sudden you are in that role and you see other necessities. A part of that is advertising. You need, you are required to make this thing a success. You can't just, we'll trust them, it'll be fine, enough people will come. You have to make sure that enough people come, that it's interesting enough. And that, of course, you theoretically know that when you're on the other side, when you're the musician. But as an organizer, you feel the pressure from those who provide the money, for those who are doubtful that this will ever fly or take off. And you have to prove to them, no, we are sustainable. This is going to work. We are going to have an audience that is interested. And how can you make that happen? Advertisement, but also finding catchy titles, maybe changing a title or discussing that with the musicians. Being musicians ourselves, of course, we can feel that side as well. And we are trying to communicate in a healthy way, to not just put a new title on a certain program, but to discuss that and to see, maybe can phrase it like that. I think this will probably catch on more. But still, we need some outside references. Being musicians ourselves, we understand the musicians on the other side, but we also need some people who have the outside view and who tell us, is this title interesting? It is interesting to me because I know what they mean. But someone, the man or the woman in the street, may not know what that means and may go like, I don't care, I don't know what that is, not interested. So we are learning a lot from that side as well. And we have to trust those who are not in the insider circles to give us good feedback that we'll take on board. You'll have to be quite open, I think, in all directions to understand necessities where you are not the professional, actually. And that's why I pretty much keep to the artistic direction. I'm not doing too much of the admin. Of course, I'm always correcting the booklet texts and so all that, giving input and ideas, but leave that to other professionals.
Delegate, maybe.
Delegate. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying to do in my life. But it's hard.
Words are hard.
Yeah.
Delegate. Thank you.
Yes, I totally understand. That's an important task to learn also, because we are so, in a way, so independent, and we try to do everything ourselves, and we think, oh my God, how can I delegate this task to somebody else? Maybe they will deliver something that I will not like. So you learn to trust people somehow, in a way.
Yeah. And at some point, cut your losses, or just leave it be. It's good enough. We've had also moments where someone thinks, oh, it could be this bit better, or if only. And at some point, when you have one concert per month to go through, at some point you might say, or you should learn to say, that's good enough, or they like it. It's not my favorite idea, but fine. We'll fly with it. To let things go, also very important.
Yes, also maybe a practical question. How does an organization like yours, such a large one, let's say, with a lot of people involved, how does it survive in the modern Basel in terms of practical support? And maybe you could talk briefly about financial support from the fundings, from the funds, from Stiftungen.
Yeah, first and foremost, we have a board of helpers and directors who do that in their spare time for free. So that's what we're also doing. A lot of planning is unpaid work. So because we are an association, a Verein, so that is actually not hired work. To then pay for all the overhead that we have. Of course, we have advertisement, and the flyers need to be printed, and the program notes. All that costs money. Also, the museum that we are hiring costs money, even for a reduced rate. And then, of course, mainly the fees for the musicians. We have the donations at the end of the concert, and they are usually quite generous. That helps a lot, I must say. But we also get funding from Stiftungen, from what you call that in English?
Foundations?
Foundations?
Yes.
Yeah. So we get funding from foundations, and Switzerland is quite rich in that, having a lot of foundations where you can apply. And that is a lot of work that Thomas Christ and Holly Scarborough are mainly doing, applying for funding. That gives us the financial cushion to actually plan safely for a year. We always have to go out a bit on a limb. We always have to start planning without knowing if all the money will be in, but so far it has always worked. So fingers crossed. It requires a lot of admin. That's luckily not my part. All that I can do is that when someone like Holly or Thomas ask for a more detailed description of a program, that one of us who plans the program writes in detail how much research goes in this, to provide content with which they can then apply for funding, to show that what we are doing has depth, is worth to be supported.
Great. I think we are running out of battery
because
I wish I could. Yeah. But maybe we could have part 2 of our conversation at some point.
We can have another one where now you know me a bit better. Maybe you know in which direction to ask.
Super. Thank you very much. I wish all the best to ReRenaissance and see you there. And all the descriptions and links I will put in the description box of our episode. Thank you very much, Marc.
I thank you. Thank you, Darina.